Well, hello, my friends. Welcome to the Artist Next Level podcast. Super happy to connect here with you. And especially today, I'm very happy because here in the podcast, we have Sara Gallagher, a great artist. And we're going to talk about her show, Our Inner World, that is now as an online exclusive of Territory Contemporary Gallery.
Resources, inspiring interviews, business practices, and practical advice to take your art career to the next level. Join Sergio Gomez in today's Artist Next Level and get ready to take control of your career.
Well, my friends, I'm, like I said at the intro, super happy because today I'm not here by myself, but we have a conversation directly Chicago, California. We're talking about an interview that we're going to be having today with Sara Gallagher. Sara is a wonderful artist, and we see, if you are watching this on video, you will see a couple of her works in the background. We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about a solo show, exclusive online with Territory Contemporary called Our Inner World that runs all the way of the month of October. And, we're going to discover a little bit about, who is Sara, what makes her work to be such a fabulous type of work, which I love. And we're going to talk about why I like her work as well. And which is always, that makes an easier interview, right? And so it's going to be great. I'm looking forward to that. So Sara, how are you? How are you doing today?
I'm doing really great, Sergio. I'm excited to be here. Grateful that you asked to have me on, and yeah, I'm really feeling great about the show this month. So happy to talk about it.
Excellent. Well, Sara, you are in California, so you have really beautiful weather just about year round, which is nice. I'm here in Chicago, where we were talking about before the interview. I'll be ready to go into winter clothes very quickly, very soon. But it's good to have this chat. I think this is a really interesting month of October, as we kind of begin to think about the end of a year, beginning of another one, getting ready for the holidays, everything that comes around as well. And so I think it's a great month also to look at our work, and particularly as we look at your work and the exhibition called Our Inner World, which I want to talk about that. I want to highlight some of my favorite pieces in the show. But before we do that, which I'm looking forward to that, let's get a little bit to know you, for particularly those of our friends who have never met you. Tell us a little bit about, just in a few words, how did you became to be interested in art and how you became an artist?
Oh man, in just a few words.
Just a few.
I've practiced art my entire life, pretty much ever since I could hold a pencil.
Hmm.
Um, but it really has taken many different shapes,
Hmm.
interdisciplinary, if you will. But I have recently been practicing in figurative realism. Um, some, surrealism elements has always been interesting to me, but now when I discovered um, my interest in graphite works a few years ago in 2019, I really got interested in working in graphite, and since has really developed from there. I now incorporate pan pastel into my pieces as well.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, I do think that I was finally able to find my voice after finding this medium in particular.
Oh, I'm really interested to dive into that. So let's go. So 2019, that was a world before the pandemic, right? I remember that, I think. So let's talk a little bit about, before the work that you have right now, before the graphite, what were you doing?
Well, I directly before I was an oil painter,
Hmm.
and I did mostly sort of surreal landscape work.
Hmm.
And you can actually especially in the pieces behind me, you can kind of see that translating a bit into my graphite pieces today. But yeah, I was very influenced by Turner,
Okay, yeah, of course.
looking at
Hmm.
the sort of very emotive, ethereal sort of landscapes.
Hmm.
And prior to then, so I actually have a degree in film photography and drawing and painting. So I
Okay.
studied film photography as well, and um, so all of that combined, the I don't know, the hands-on nature of the film photography. I was really able to hone in on composition, but then, actually processing the film in the darkroom was very um, laborious in a way that
Hmm.
I really enjoy. Obviously, oil painting is very meticulous in that way as well, and so moving into the realism works, I feel like it's kind of a blend of the photography background mixed in with some of the more
Hmm.
real pieces that I was exploring in painting.
Yeah, which actually makes sense now. When I look at your work, that is quite interesting, and I find it fascinating because a lot of times, many artists kind of have the reverse approach where they start with pencil, graphite, and then they move into more, the painting mediums. For you, it's kind of like the other way around. What was it about graphite that found you, or that you found in it? We said, 'cause I think once we come to a medium that we like, I think it's both. We find it, and I think it finds us too. So tell me a little bit about, what got you into it, and why did you decided to really make that your preferred medium?
Sure. I love how you phrase that, Sergio, of you find something in it, but it finds you as
Yeah.
well. And I certainly feel that way. So I kind of, to be perfectly honest, in my oil painting, I wanted to achieve a degree of realism, but also just I was having a really hard time putting on the canvas what was in my head. And
Hmm.
so I decided that I wanted to seek education again
Hmm.
to try to learn and develop and sort of push past my own ceiling. And in my research of looking for different workshops to take, um, I thought that going quote unquote back to the basics of,
Hmm.
going back to graphite, something
Hmm.
that can be perceived as a fairly, um, or sort of like a starting point, even as you mentioned. I thought that would be a good place to start to hone in on my rendering skills, and then take it back to oil painting,
Hmm.
uh, which I may do one day. But I ended up finding in 2019, I found a 5-day graphite workshop with Dirk Zamersky in Germany. And so I'm sure many of the people listening know that, he's a very prolific, amazing hyperrealism
Hmm.
artist. And so I flew to Germany and took the 5-day workshop with him. And as much as I thought it was going to be a launching point back into oil painting, I feel like me and the graphite, we just spoke to each other so well, that I don't know, I fell in love with it, and it certainly sunk its claws into me as well. So yeah, and I guess ever since then I've been starting to explore wanting to incorporate color again, missing the physicality of painting,
Hmm. Hmm.
like the movement of it, it's you can engage your body in a different way when you paint than when you
Yeah.
are
Right. Hmm.
drawing. And so I'd say in the last 9 months to a year have been exploring incorporating dry pastel into my graphite pieces, and
Hmm.
um, so accessing painting in that way. So not, I don't know, maybe one day I'll go back to oil painting, but for now I'm really loving really diving into to the mixed media with
The mix. Yeah.
graphite
No,
pastel.
I love it. I love that story. How sometimes we're looking for something, but then, in the process of, we discover something else, or rediscovered, because it's not like you didn't know about graphite, or, you had not done it before, but it was the process of that, maybe all of a sudden open up whole new avenues for you to explore, and kind of like going back to the basics. But at the same time, in your work, it's, as you go back to the basics in terms of the medium, but also you're really going in depth, in other aspects, and the medium itself, you make that to do wonders, and that is, also demonstrate your skill level and your commitment to make it work, right? To really push the boundaries of what you can do with it and to explore what you can do. And I think a lot of times also the medium connects, or it should connect to also to our ideas and the things that we're thinking about in our work. Particularly, as we look at this show, Our Inner World, it's kind of like this. Well, the title says it almost all, right? The things that happen in our mind or brain a lot of times, then necessarily what we reflect in the outside, right? Kind of like the dual stories that we live on a daily basis and the people that we encountered. Tell me a little bit about that, about that inner world that you are depicting through your work and the narratives that your work present in that sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very broad topic, really,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's what intrigues me so much is because it really, um, it's not my inner world, it's our inner world. And so
Mm-hmm.
my pieces, each individual piece actually explores the sort of inner workings of different unique individuals who I have asked to participate in my body of work and actually um, share with me what's going on with them
Right.
internally. And so it's a really beautiful, to me, I feel like the whole process um, is really beautiful. It is touching to engage with individuals in that way, um, in a vulnerable and authentic way, and to ask people to share that which maybe we don't, share right away in
Mm-hmm.
normal social settings.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of wanting to break that taboo that it's okay. Like if I ask somebody how they're doing, I really mean it. I want to know actually how they're doing, and um, it's anyway. So the topic itself interests me just on a deep personal level. I think it reflects the kind of person that I am and want to be. Is someone who cares for and is interested in really what others around me are going through,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to learn more. And yeah, so with this show, the the finished pieces are really just a part um,
Mm-hmm.
of the whole art practice, if you will, of inviting people into my studio to share with me, um, to then allow me the time to come up with a visual representation that feels good to them, that they do feel reflects what we spoke about and what they're going through, and then to come back and actually pose for the pieces themselves,
Yeah.
and then do this long process of a, very detailed um,
Mm-hmm.
rendering, drawing, or painting of that depiction. It's all a very long meditative process.
Yeah.
I love.
Yeah. No, it sounds, the from beginning to end, the laborious process to get to the final pieces that we have in the show, starting with those conversations, which are difficult, having those difficult conversations. The person on the other side has to trust you, to also open up. And I feel like, what you are doing with this is like you're peeling a skin, right? On who we are, and presenting that, revealing that to the world, and also in a way, not that undermines the person, the subject, but in a way that we identify with some of the same sentiments or some of the same feelings, because we all, have our things that we struggle with. We all have our own peeling, right? That covers what's behind. And in that sense, I love that you talk about that, because I think, when I think about the medium that you're working with, you know, paper first is fragile, right? You're working on a fragile surface. When I think of canvas is rigid, strong, it lasts for long, many minutes. Paper, it has a fragility to it. That's why I love paper also in my work, because my work's about humanity, and I feel like my work has to reflect that in physicality as well. So, when I think about what you're doing too, kind of peeling that layer to what's inside, the the medium for some paper is fragile, and it also, as you apply um, the medium onto the paper, it's like an onion skin. It's like a one layer. It's not like painting. You got the ground, and you got layers and layers and layers until you build the image. Pretty much, it's mark making. You are crafting these images out of mark making, and that is, I think, is really connected to kind of what you're talking about in a beautiful way. These pieces are carefully crafted. They're carefully created, honoring the person on the other side and revealing something to us. And one of the pieces from this show that I really love is one piece that we had here at the gallery, the one called Outside, from 2020. So that was like right in the middle of the pandemic. I love that piece. When I saw it, I remember opening the box and pulling the artwork and hanging it on the wall. It really, really attracted me. There's like the best way to describe it for our friends who, are not looking at it in the podcast. So there's this figure, it's a female figure looking at the viewer, but we only see from the nose down. And, so we don't know her facial expression very much. And she's standing, the background is being blurred to a way, so there seems like a dream-like memory sense to it. And, just like a foot ahead of her, there's also like a blurred, which seems to be herself as a nude figure, but seems to be looking down. And I don't know, the whole piece is like, to me, is like this conversation between the two, and this sense of presence, but also memory of like being behind, something's ahead. I don't know. I just bring so much material to chat about, to talk about, what's happening in there. And this piece, I think maybe it also impacted me so much because we were still kind of like, in the pandemic. And has the pandemic influenced your work? Because in the pandemic, kind of, we all kind of became our worlds back again. We were not going outside. We were like ready. We became more introverted, for a while, and dealing with our own emotions a lot more. Did the pandemic in some way also influence some of these works and the things that you were exploring through your work?
It's a very good question. Yes, trying to think for this show in particular. There's one piece, actually, this piece right behind me.
Okay, Falling, right? I believe it's called.
It's called Heavy.
Oh, Heavy. Sorry, yeah, Heavy.
But yeah, there is a falling figure through the sky, and there's this heavy rock above her, sort of, you know, chasing her down. And she's in that sort of ethereal landscape I was talking about. But yeah, this piece, I made it during the pandemic. It's actually about an emotion I was going through. So this is a self-portrait in a way. And I was experiencing pretty intense insomnia throughout a great deal of the pandemic. So yeah, this piece was directly sort of impacted by my experience of having a great deal of anxiety that was waking me up at night. And the way I kind of described it, I would wake up and have so much tension and anxiety in my body that it almost felt like a falling dream when you wake up, and you
Yeah, the way I wakes you. Yeah.
but then, so there's that awake, that like jolted awake feeling. However, my body was just so tired and wanted desperately to sleep. It was very heavy. It was a heavy body, but this like jolted anxiety internally,
Hmm.
very created a lot of tension. And and it made it very difficult to sleep. So I ended up actually I decided to make this piece sort of as an act of understanding what I was going through and feeling. And in the middle of the night when I would wake up, I would get up and work on it.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, and in a very beautiful way that was very unexpected. When I finally finished the drawing,
Hmm.
uh, my insomnia dissipated.
Oh, really?
Yes.
That's that's awesome.
Yeah, so it was in complete transparently. It's come back in waves, and it goes away, it comes back and goes away. But it
Yeah.
was an amazing thing to sort of process it,
Yeah.
and I got some relief from it for a little while
Hmm.
after that.
No, I love that because I think the process of trying to understand, make sense of the things that we're going through, through a lot of times through art, music, poetry, reading, so a lot of times, allows us to kind of clear our mind, clear some of those anxieties that are going through it. And for us as artists, we have the channel of art, and I think that helps a lot. That's good. Yeah, and I love how you're exploring these different ideas, exploring our inner worlds through the work. But tell me a little bit about that piece that I really like, the outside. What would you share about whatever you want to share about that piece that I love so much,
Yeah.
and that is already sold.
And thank you so much for just, I don't know, it's nice to hear your reflection on it. I'm glad that it impacted you. I also am quite fond of this piece. It came from a conversation with a woman who, a friend of mine actually, who
Hmm.
wanted to participate. And for what came out of our initial conversation was talking about how um, sometimes you can be present in a room or in a relationship or in some circumstance where you are you're there physically, but emotionally you just feel detached and
Hmm.
you're somewhat just outside of your body. Um,
Hmm.
so it's sort of a an exploration of that sort of disconnect. And it's
Hmm.
not like you're so far away that you've lost all connection, but there's just this there is this distance between where you are physically and then what you're going through emotionally. And I do think that in social situations, it's hard to show up and wear your emotions really on your sleeve.
Hmm.
Sometimes you need to show up and be more put together perhaps than you are. And yeah, so it's about being just outside of yourself, sort of like
Hmm.
an emotional bystander to
Yeah, no, yeah, and I think you explained it really well. And what I love about the piece is like this otherness is within arm's reach. She could almost like step right into it again, you
Mhm.
know,
Yeah.
and so there's almost like this. Sometimes one advances, the other one is, sometimes maybe the separation maybe further out, sometimes a little bit closer, but it's like it's the daily walk, Nobody has it all together all the time.
Right.
Yeah, and that
Yeah,
is
and
good to understand. Hmm.
yeah, I think that one thing I'm constantly trying to achieve in my work is yes, representing these emotions that, maybe sometimes they could be perceived as something like quote unquote negative or oh, something that you need to work on, but I don't want to actually I don't know, it's not a critique about having these emotions. It's more of just talking about how they're a very real part of being human.
Hmm.
So like you said, it's within arm's reach. It's not like this crazy, uh, distant, um, you know, I don't know, not going to reconnect. It's
Hmm.
my pieces are never meant to feel um, negative. I think I try hard to hold these perhaps more challenging emotions or just emotions that aren't talked about as much in sort
Hmm.
of a beautiful setting
Hmm.
that can feel more approachable or like if you do relate to it that you have an access point to talk about it now, and it's
Right.
not as scary or overwhelming or
Yeah. Yeah, and I totally get that in your work. They by no means are negative in what you're describing, but the way I describe them, I would say they're inviting. They invite us to a conversation, and to explore what's happening in there and what parts do we relate to at any given time. Which is what I find fascinating. And you said something about, like, we are not always put together, right? When we are in a social setting, we have these masquerades that we wear and things like that. There's one piece there that's called "Beginning to Bear," which is almost like this masquerade, right? That you would put, but it is the actual. I assume it's the actual face of the same figure that's behind it, but it kind of hides the expression of the figure behind it. But it's like, what I love about this piece is like this second phase type of masquerade is floating, right? She's not holding it; it's just there. Again, kind of like the other one. There's like a level of separation that keep brings us close to it. She cannot, again, just do half step and then it's right in, right? It kind of fits right in the face, but then it can also separate a little bit. Tell me about this one, because it's another one that I like them all, but this is another one that really intrigues me.
yeah, hey, this one is similar in a way to the
Hmm.
themes of outside, but in particular, this conversation was more about actually beginning to bear the less desirable qualities of yourself intentionally,
Hmm.
like removing that put togetherness, um, and letting yourself be sort of messy, or revealing like a shadow side to yourself. Um, and that is something that takes a lot of courage. I think it takes feeling a certain safety, either a safety with the person you're sharing it with, or a safety within yourself of just a
Hmm.
groundedness to have that, to allow yourself to start to begin to bear those qualities that you maybe aren't as proud of, but are very much a part of you still.
Hmm. Right. Now, as I was looking at the show on Artsy and looking at all the pieces, it's really interesting how Artsy, the algorithm kind of organized the pieces in the page of the show. And there's one piece that is a very central piece, and it just happened to be in the middle of the page. It was called High Bar. It's a recent piece from 2022, a really stunning portrait too. That's where you are introducing a little bit of more tonality of color, right, in the piece. And we see the figure standing in the center. We see the hands. There's some movement there. Tell me about that piece as well. It has a very strong sense of presence, and determination and pose. Tell me about this piece. I think it's beautiful work, and it's one of your more recent ones.
Mhm. Yeah, thank you so much. I love that piece. Yeah, and I think you described it so well of as far as having this sort of strong presence. For those listening, the viewer is staring, straight at or excuse me, the subject is looking straight at the viewer, and
Mm-hmm.
it's a woman who this the lower half of the image is in black and white.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this shadow, kind of a bar going across her neck and falling on the background behind her. And then just above that shadow, the figure comes into color. So the concept behind this is, as as the title suggests, a high bar. It
Mm-hmm.
is about just holding a very high bar for oneself.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I feel this is something I can relate to. This was a piece that I had a conversation with a different individual, but I could very much relate to the sentiment she shared of, just having a really high expectation for oneself. There's kind of the difference between being really ambitious and
Mm-hmm.
then not actually. taking the time to pause and celebrate successes. Sort
Hmm.
of like this idea that you hold this high bar and anything below that bar isn't really fully formed or as worthy.
Hmm.
So I kind of describe that with the being monochrome in black and white. But then above the bar, that's where you've reached this sort of like life of accomplishment. But in her face and in her hand, in her posture, um, like there's nothing really celebratory about it. It's not,
Hmm.
it's, there's determination and not necessarily accomplishment. And I
Hmm.
think that so
Hmm.
that high bar just continues to rise.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, so the piece is kind of just asking oneself to contemplate that in general.
Hmm.
It's it's a hard thing to do as somebody who goes through that. It's tricky to actually stop and pat yourself on the back occasionally and take a pause. Um, but yeah, so that's what the piece is about.
Yeah, yeah, no, I love this piece, and I think how you talk about it is quite interesting. And I didn't realize that it was the shadow that was what begins the tonality of color in the portrait until you mentioned, I first saw it as kind of a gradual, but it is also gradual, the tone from black and white to the one third at the top where we see a hint of color. But yeah, as you're describing her, I'm looking at her right here on my screen too, and yeah, she's ready to go for the next thing, right? Ready to go and grab the next opportunity, the next thing, whatever that may be, and I think that is also how she is presented, and she's looking us directly in the eye, like, yeah, I'm coming for it, and so I think this is a great piece. And as we could talk about each of the pieces in the show in that sense, that they all bring something to the table. They all have something that we can grasp on and explore and continue to try to discover about the subject and about ourselves, because they become a reflection of who we are as individuals as we transition in life and as we go through our highs and lows. But in a beautiful way, you are portraying them as experiences. These are the experiences that we go through, and in a positive light of, yeah, this is life. Welcome. Right, welcome. This is who we are. This is what we do in life. And then uh, one more thing I wanted to also point out in the show is that not all the pieces are figurative. You have one piece like the one that you have behind you on the side that is like a suspended something, which maybe we can talk a little bit about that. And there's also another one that is a landscape by itself. But tell me about that suspended rag or this veil, or there's I'm not sure exactly what it is. All I know is that it is suspended and it's organic and seems like it be floating and moving.
Yes. Yeah, so it's fine that it's ambiguous.
Yeah.
It's actually just a when I first it was when I think it was actually the very first piece that I made in the series,
Mm.
exploring anxiety. And as I mentioned with my heavy piece, it's actually funny. I think that they really relate
Yeah, they do.
visually to each other, and the
Hmm.
landscape one that you brought up as well. Um, and these are all sort of my own self-portraits of. The show is a combination of conversations with other people,
Hmm.
and then sharing my own vulnerable experiences and
Hmm.
exploring those as well. Um, so this one is how I feel when I'm anxious is you're not grounded, you're not like floating and like up in the clouds, you're just sort of suspended in this state of tension of you don't know if you're going to uh, you know float down and hit the ground or if you're just going to fly away.
Hmm. Yeah,
Um,
there's a state of in betweenness, right?
yeah. Yeah, and you're being held there, and it's not, I don't know. I think the feeling of impermanence is important in that it will either fall to the ground or fly away. Um, the object itself actually is a tissue paper, so
Mm,
it could do either.
right.
That uncertainty, one of the two will happen, but you don't know which one.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's kind of my own personal experience of anxiousness, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. No, I love that piece too. There's that sense of weightlessness too, and there's a depthness to it because of the darker background, the light, also section uh, on the top of the drawing, and the suspension in between the two. And you wonder, what's above, what's below, right? We don't know, right? It's just kind of like that section that we see. And I love it. I love it. I don't know. One of the reasons why I love that also is because a lot in my paintings, when I work with the figure, I like the suspended figure. Sometimes you will just see the feet kind of like in suspension. That's all you see in the painting. I find, our experience of what's up and down, is really closely related to gravity, right? Gravity brings us to a point, but there's really no such thing as up and down. It's just what it is, just the gravity that kind of brings us. But it's just our understanding of being attached to the ground. And I've always been attracted to birds, and things that fly because of they defy that gravity, right? Like it just amazes me to look up and look at the birds, and to see how they defy gravity. So in a lot of my paints, I try to defy that too, and detach us from it. And when I see this drawing too, there's that sense of there's not much tension in the detachment. It's just quietly, softly, kind of like riding this in betweenness until it will find a place to rest and perhaps fly again, because it seems like it's so weightless that just any sense of a wind will just push it away to another place.
Mhm.
And I just find it super a beautiful piece as well.
That's
And by the way, that one is available. That one is still available, at least at the time of this recording. So when
those
I'm,
are-
there's exactly those both that are in the back. A lot of the other pieces have sold. Also, the landscape is available. So I invite our friends to go check that out. You can find them on RC with Territory Contemporary Gallery. You can find the show there, and you can see all these pieces that we're talking about and others also more in detail. And I invite you to do that because they are really, really stunning. And I want to move a little bit away from the specifics of some of the pieces and talk about you as the artist too. Maybe some of the fun facts, about you as the artist. I know because of now we go social media, we all kind of follow each other and we see kind of what we do. I know your love for music, and I would love if you can tell us a little about that.
Yeah. Yes. So I am an active musician as well as an
Mhm.
artist, and I sing and write songs. I play the banjo
Mhm.
and a bunch of other instruments. I play the singing saw, which is really fun. Are you familiar with
Wow.
the singing saw? It's the singing saw is it's
Uh-uh.
actually just a saw. You could like cut wood with
Oh
it.
yes, yes, I remember. Yeah, I've seen that. Yeah,
You strike it with a violin bow.
yeah, yeah.
Sounds very ethereal, like my drawings. But
I was
yeah,
thinking for a moment. I have seen that before. Someone like, yes, I have.
um, yeah. So that is very much a part of who I am, and my partner and I play music together.
Mhm.
We actually have a single coming out tomorrow.
Oh wow, that's exciting.
Um, yeah, and we have a mini tour through Italy in next week. We go and play, and so it's
Wow.
very fun to share my life with both music and art. I call myself an insatiable creator, uh, and when if I need a break from drawing, then I
Uh-huh.
pick up my banjo, and if
Yeah.
I need a break from the banjo, then I go back
Pick up your
to
time.
the studio and yeah, so it's constantly creating things and yeah, and my partner is the same way, so we have a very vibrant household in that regard.
That's exciting. So tell me what's the name if we want to download the single that comes out. How do we find it?
Yeah, so it is released under Jacob Aranda.
Okay.
And yeah, he is my partner. And yeah, I played on that along with our whole band of very talented
Okay.
musicians and friends. So that comes out tomorrow. What is that, the 14th?
That will be the for October 14th.
Yeah, and it's one of a few singles coming out, and then followed by a full length album that we're all on in the spring. So.
That's exciting. That's exciting. Is that your first album? Or
Um, no, I've collaborated on a few
okay.
albums. I'm also I have an album out with the band Gentle Spirit that came
Oh,
out a
okay.
year or two ago, maybe. Yeah, and Jacob and I have a few singles out, and so if
Super.
you look on I think on my link tree, there should be,
Okay.
yeah, yeah, links to the music
To the
projects.
music part. That's awesome. No, thank you for sharing that. I think that's fascinating. Because I think, we were talking about this before we hit the record button. The artist is made of the wholeness of who we are and everything that we bring, our family or our experiences and our other passions. Which in this case for you is also music. Now, very excited. Do you find that sometimes lyrics that you're working on, may become titles or may become things that you talk about in your art?
Oh yeah. Especially there's one lately that I haven't yet made a visual composition for it, but I certainly will, and I'm very excited. I think it might be one of my first multi-figure pieces of different individuals, not two
No,
people.
okay, yeah,
Um, but yeah, the line is heavy are the stones, yet the river runs through it. And
mm,
that came to me through all of the craziness of overturning a row and
mhm,
sort of building up to that and actually
yeah,
happening and sort of the tapping into how I was feeling about all of that of the resilience of women, the resilience of people who are oppressed,
mhm,
and that the weight of these just the weight that gets put
mhm,
on others, uh, we still move through it. And
yeah,
so that's, anyways, that line kind of sort of stuck with me, and so I intend to make some art pieces from that. But I have a new song that I recently just finished that uh, kind of starts off with that line. So.
that is cool. That is cool. Yeah, it's interesting, right? How these things kind of move are in and out of their studio practice, and as they go through our head and through our mind, and they come back and forth, and that is exciting. Well, Sarah, thank you so much for sharing your art with us. Thank you for sharing a little bit of your time too and being here in the podcast. We appreciate that. We appreciate you. And we want to invite again our friends to go check out the show, check out more of Sarah's work at Territory Contemporary Gallery. Just find us online at territorycontemporary.com. Or, of course, if you want to see the show, Our Inner World, go to rc.net and then just look for Territory Contemporary Gallery. It will be one of the shows that are listed right now. And Sarah, where can our friends find you if they want to follow you on Instagram, particularly, or any other social media you may be at?
Yeah, Sara Gallagher Artwork is my handle across all social medias.
Easy.
So that's SaraGallagher.
Mhm.
Then artwork. But yeah, and that's
The-
on Instagram, on Facebook. I think in theory I have a TikTok, but I'm not on there very often.
in theory. Okay. And your website is under the same name?
Yes, SaraGallagherArtwork.com.
Well, that makes it super easy. One spelling for all. Well, thank you so much. Congratulations on the new album. Congratulations also on the new work that you are producing. Safe travels. No, it's going to be awesome. And I'm sure that will inspire some new pieces when you get back as well into the studio. So thank you, Sarah. Have a good rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Sergio. I really appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
No problem. And to all our friends, if you enjoyed this interview, do us a big favor. Please share it with all your friends. Subscribe to the podcast will make us really, really happy. And if you visit the show, if you follow Sara, please send her a message and let her know, what was your favorite piece in the show. That would be really, really cool. All right. Goodbye, my friends. We'll see you at the next level.
Check out our website at www.theartistnextlevel.com, where you will find our podcast library, learn about our upcoming webinars, find resources relevant to your career, and much more. Thanks for listening to today's podcast, and we'll see you at the next level.